So, look, my proposition for today is that we need to be in a state of constant design. And I mean, this is because of all the different issues that we face. And that's economic and social and environmental. But I contend that what that really is all about is how we can achieve this, which I think is a modern value, both for organizations and individuals. And it means a hell of a lot to all of us that live in Europe. Resilience, being strong and staying strong through all of the tough times as well. And we achieve resilience through adaptation, through constantly adapting. And design is brilliant at enabling us to adapt. And we do that in design, of course, through exploring, through being great explorers. And I believe that designers are both the guides, often, for great explorers and innovators, and they are great explorers and innovators themselves. So what I want to talk to you about is drawing from my experience, particularly some of the work that I've done over the last 10 years at the Design Council. So that's work on the environment, on particularly healthcare, working with high-tech ventures as well, manufacturers, a whole array of different issues. I want to talk about what state design is in. I want to talk about what does it mean to be in a constant state of design. And I want to talk about how does the state design, how we expand that idea out. So I want to start, and by the way, I'm not going to give you a whole thesis on the state of design. I've got one very simple point, really, because really the big issue is that design is expanding. But I want to start in Beijing. And I've gone to and fro to China on many occasions. And I was over there a few years ago, and I met these guys. And this is the managing director of a company called ChoiceMed. And they make medical heart test equipment, self-testers. And, this was the product that they took to a German manufacturing fair some years back. And, it's no surprise. They didn't make any money. They didn't make any sales. But what somebody told them was, it looks hideous. And it looks a bit like a dictaphone, and I wouldn't trust it. And if I were you, I'd get a designer. So enter David Jia. Now, David was just out of college in Beijing. He just set up his company called LKK Design. And he did what designers do. So he went to talk to senior clinicians, and he did usability work, and he looked at the practical issues, and he looked at the interfaces, and he looked at how you're going to communicate this product, and he developed, something that looks like a proper medical product and functions like one. And no surprise, literally 1 year later, same managing director went back to the same fair, made loads of sales, and there we are. It's a happy story. 6 million yuan later, and they're the major competitor Omron, which is the big Japanese producer in this territory. But the story doesn't end there, because David has gone on over 6 years, and when I saw him last year, he's got 200 designers now working for him from all over Europe. He's designed over 1,000 products now, and he's just set up an office in London. And this is actually part of what I've seen. And I went over in 2009, I had the privilege of opening the first Beijing Design Week, and they had what then Premier Win Jiabao announced, we're going to move from made in China to designed in China. And this boot here was designed by Li Ning, the great Olympic gymnast, who now runs the biggest sportswear company that none of us have even heard of, one of the biggest sportswear companies in the world, but is in China. And of course, it will spread around the world, give it time. So what's going on here? Well, what I see is going on is not just the 7 billion people living on the planet with so many needs that design has all sorts of opportunities around, but we have the 3 billion. And the 3 billion is, by 2050, 40% of the world's population will be classed as middle class. Middle class being technically earnings apparently between $3,000 and $12,000. So not a lot of money. but actually with a greater demand now on wanting good services, a will or a wish to have things better, work well around them, all around the planet. And that is fueling opportunity and actually demand for design. And of course, larger businesses are responding to this. Here, Burberry, we see this as in companies like this where they've got now leading designers on the board. A fantastic story here. Angela Ahrendts, the CEO, Christopher Bailey, the designer, and over a 6-year period, they've gone from effectively a company that looked like it might have gone bust to 5 billion market cap and FTSE 100 and stores around the world, and it's an extraordinary success story. And of course, we know this. This is the economic story of design. And of course, in education, this has been followed. Design has entered our business schools at Imperial now. You can't do an MBA without actually studying design. And we see it in our, as part of a wider trend. In OECD countries now, there's been a trebling of the number of people who work in the knowledge industries, from 50 million to 150 million. Literally, we now spend, and in this new economy, we spend less as a cost of sales on plant and machinery, on tangibles, than we do on intangibles like design and advertising, and what are these sort of, what have been called in the past, softer skills. So literally, my point here, and there are many things that are happening in design, but I think the most profound one for me, which now there is a responsibility for design to respond, is that design is expanding. We did a survey in 2005, and another one, the same one in 2010, with 2008, the banking crisis in the middle. And we found that during that period, the design sector grew in the UK by 29%. So there is a constant now growth and expansion in design. So what does it mean to be in a constant state of design? Well, I want to draw here just one story. It's one now of over 3,000 that we enabled and ran at the Design Council. And it was all about helping entrepreneurs, small manufacturers, high-tech firms explore their own potential and new territories. And the concept was to take designers and use them as guides and pair them up with leaders, often people who are starting up their businesses. Sometimes they're working in new services or public services. And I'm just going to give you one story. I've chosen this one. I could have chosen many different stories, but I've chosen this one because I think it really embodies the idea of resilience. And I think when we're talking about the social issues around design, we also have to remember that one of the most profound social issues is survival and having jobs. And here, Ellis Pitt was the designer. He's actually he's designed many things, including many motorbikes. And Judith Stracey is the managing director of the company. And this is what we're all so familiar if we get in a car, we drive up and down the motorways, and we see companies they call themselves logistics companies. They're transporting our goods and services all up and down our countries and across all of the borders in Europe. And these companies, of course, are exactly the sort of companies that suffer in a recession. So how do you compete, and how does a company like this survive? Well, I'm going to just cut to the chase and show you what happened out of this pairing. So you get the idea, problem solving, but the pairing of a design guide and an MD injected the confidence to say we can be something different and we can really inject design not just as a one-off but as something that lives within the business. And they went on within 6 months, £600,000 of new business, new business wins went up from 8% to 43%, sales revenue forecasts up. This was all done by a small design company, Allotment Design. They'd only been going for 2 years. And you can see here, they won pretty much every single award that was going there. Haulage Industry Awards, Design Effectiveness Awards, Marketing Effectiveness Awards. They won the Design Week Best of Show. It started with really how we can embed design so that it happens constantly within that business and that everybody understands that design is the way that we'll explore and experiment and develop our relationships. And I think the most profound thing for us when we embarked on this journey was providing a whole series of tools to our guides. And they're all available, they're online, they're open source. But I think this one is perhaps most profound. That most design seems to happen in those in the second half of the 4 quartiles, develop and deliver. That people have some idea of what they want, and they develop a brief and they bring in a designer. And when design really works is when it's actually part of the discovery process, as it was in this particular story, and in the many thousands that we worked on over the last 10 years. It's part of discovery, it's part of definition, it's part of working out what the business or the organization actually stands for. And of course it works. Talking about impact of design, in each case, whether that's net operating profit, net turnover, net exports, or on social issues, and many of these projects were on social issues, for every pound that these organizations were spending, they were getting the return within 2 years. But how do you take what we know works at a company level and escalate that up to a state level? That's, I suppose, the question that fascinated me and that I've been particularly interested in. And I'm just going to tell you 2 quick stories. The first is about infection control. It's an issue that every nation faces. It costs a huge amount, both financially, economically, but also socially. Literally, we lose, as you can see in the UK, it's 9,000 deaths a year at a cost of £1 billion. And this is when you go into a hospital and you think you're going to get well and you catch a nasty bug at the other end. So what we did here was gather all of the players. These were the leading clinicians, we worked with nurses, with the leading scientists, we brought all the research together, but then we said design, put it under a design lens, and also use design researchers, and we'll find out new things. And the biggest insight was that hospitals need to not just be kept clean, they need to be easy to clean. And here's an example of some of the work. I'm just going to give you cut straight to the chase, but on the left-hand side, a typical piece of furniture in a hospital where, particularly in the bedside area, where bugs get transmitted so easily, often made of chipboard with lots of nooks and crannies where nasty bugs can linger. And on the right-hand side, where the designers Kester were paired up, in this case, with a leading manufacturer of these products, and you get something that's easy to clean. It's made of materials that bugs don't adhere to. It's even got a locking mechanism with an RFID tag on your wrist. It just makes sense. You wonder why it wasn't done in the first place. Here, a commode. The nurses that we filmed during the research, we saw them on their hands and knees cleaning commodes with a toothbrush. On one occasion, it took a nurse 5 hours to clean a commode, and an average commode has about 200 working parts. It's extraordinary. So here, teaming up the design team, Pearson Lloyd, who are the same designers that designed the Virgin Sleep Seat, with a small manufacturer, and we get a commode that has 12 working parts. It it's stackable, it can go into a sluice room. It only takes literally a matter of then minutes to wipe down. And you wonder why this hasn't been done before. No surprise that it won the Ergonomic Society Awards. It's in the Design Museum. It's in other museums around the world. Out of this exploration came over 15 products that are now on sale all around the world. They've been adopted in the UK hospitals and in hospitals around the world. And the speed at which this happened, by actually embedding design, is phenomenal. 12 months to prototype, within 2 years, 25 million of sales, and it's gone on and on. It's made a difference. It's reducing the impact of MRSA, C. difficile, and other hospital-acquired infections. And it's also, of course, working economically as well. And one other story, this is more recent, so actually the infection control project, Design Bugs Out, was one of the first that we did in this area, and this is one that we literally just signed off on last year. And the focus was around dementia and elder care. 1% of global GDP is the cost of caring for people today, and that cost is going to treble over the next 20 years.
One of the things that really struck us when we were reading about dementia was how big a problem weight loss is, whether that comes from losing interest in food or forgetting to eat. And there are a number of obvious knock-on effects if you don't maintain your weight. Ode is about using fragrance in an ambient, discreet, pleasurable way to maintain an interest in eating for somebody.
This is a really emotive, high-quality fragrance in a room that happens to have a byproduct which, sitting there long enough, it'll make you think, well, I'm quite peckish. The object has got to have a sense of respect for the condition and the environment it's sat in. It's just about being as humble as we can, because it is all about the fragrance, really.
There was a lady in a care home and she'd been losing weight, and we had the Ode in her room, and after a few days she was eating a bit more of her food, and then she was asking when it was coming, and then she was asking for second helpings. And so you start to see this snowball effect of it working, and she's one of the participants where we left it there because the team at the care home want to keep it.
The results, even just kind of a few days ago, are amazing. I mean, quite pronounced weight increases or requests for extra food. Once you're recognised for making some impact in and around nutrition, it can be then about calming moods, stimulating attention. There's so many possibilities beyond that.
So this is one of a whole series of products and services that came from an exploration of what are we going to do for our elders. This one designed by Rod Design, it's just been launched. Here's another one which was being developed by an entrepreneur called Sarah Murray. It's called Buddy, and it reappropriates prison tagging and designs it with elegance and also with dignity for elders. So instead of being something that gets put around your wrist or your ankle, it's an elegant strap worn like a watch, and it links up to a wider system. Or here, a service called The Amazings, which actually says, look, our elders have so much to offer young people and others in their community. And so here, why not actually tap some of those skills, and actually they can charge others for them. And this has taken off. It's really worth a look. It's one of a whole series of services that came from exploring this whole area of elder care at a state level, and you putting all of those under a design lens. And we did that by saying, actually, on the one hand, if you're working at a business level, you can pair individual designers with business leaders and get design infused into the organization. Here, you've got so many different organizations and many competing interests that you have to create a safe space and open and transparent working. And all of the projects that we ran in this area followed those principles. And I think what's going on here which is all about enabling this resilience and following this sense of exploration, is that design itself has been expanding, not just in its use and not just for the economic reasons, but of course, because we used to define design as from the spoon to the city, we now can define it either from the pixel to the city, or I'm sure we'll hear today, from the genome to the city. The very particles which we're designing with get smaller and smaller, and this also contributes to that expansion of design. That our definitions of design have also become clearer. That it's no longer that we define design as the same as creativity and innovation. It is, in fact, the link between the two. If creativity is the generation of ideas, it's about how we have ideas, well, everybody can do that, and we have to tap into that creativity. Innovation is how we turn those ideas into the products and services, and design is the connection between the two. And so I want to leave you with this thought about resilience. And this came from the philosopher Alain de Botton, which is that resilience is keeping going, even when things are looking dark, accepting that reversals are normal, remembering that human nature is, in the end, tough, and not frightening others with your fears. And he launched this definition alongside 10 modern virtues a few weeks ago. I think that they're very interesting. I think it's very interesting that he put the first as resilience and the last as confidence. He's issued these really as a provocation for what are the modern values and the modern virtues, not just for organizations but for individuals. I wonder, could we as designers look at what this means for our practice? And I ask you, is that a new exploration? Is that something that design can do? Explore the relationship between design and philosophy, and design and our modern virtues, and help us achieve a consistent resilience through exploration and through that constant process of adaptation. Thank you very much.